Hey there, this is Jonathan, and in the following tutorials we're going to take a look at some animation tasks in AnimateCC, and we're also going to look at a way to make them interactive by attaching some JavaScript code to them. So let's begin. If you want to create a file that's similar to what I have, if you can't open up this one, you can create just a simple circle and convert it to a movie clip. And then I have a couple buttons here, one for pause and one for play. So you could make one button, make it a pause button, make another one, make it a play button, and then duplicate those a number of different times. And I'll show you how to duplicate quickly in just a moment. Do be aware that we have instance names on these. I've already given mine instance names. Mine's called ball1 stop underscore btn and then ball1 play underscore btn, which is very, very important. And then I go to ball 2, stop and play, ball 3, stop and play, ball 4, and ball 5. So I've already pre-named those things. The other thing that I need is a line at the bottom. Now, if you're going to draw these elements, the circle needs to be, or the ball needs to be on its own layer. The buttons I have on there another layer, and then I have the background on its own layer as well. So just important to make sure that you set up the file in a similar way. Now we're going to begin by duplicating the ball that I have here across all the different sections we need. In order to duplicate it, it's very easy by holding down the Alt key, and if you hold down the Shift as well, then you'll make sure it's constrained straight across. So whoops, somehow I let go, so there we go. Duplicate that, duplicate that, duplicate that, and duplicate that. So now I've got 5 copies of the balls. Now an easy way to convert these into individual layers for your animation is to select all of them, right click, and choose Distribute to Layers. This will make a new layer for each ball, and now we have the original ball layer that we can go ahead and delete. Now the first one should be here, so I'm going to name that, drag that underneath, and this will be anim1. This will be anim2, anim3, anim4, and anim5. In the first one, we're going to do a simple movie clip animation. Right click on it and you can create a motion tween, is actually what I meant, a simple motion tween animation. You can also right click on the frame itself, or the keyframe, and you can attach a motion tween there. And this is where we have to go when we want to do a classic tween in our next animation. So we'll do a motion tween, and you'll see it's jumped me out to frame 30, and everything else has disappeared. That's because those are only a single keyframe, and they need to exist further along to frame 30. So I'm going to go to frame 30, select the keyframes going down, and right click and choose Insert Frame. This extends that keyframe all the way through 30 frames, and we'll do that for the background as well. Now let's go back to the animation that we're going to do. At frame 30, I want to rock this animation in time so I can see a keyframe here that I'm creating. In order to do this, hit the up arrow down one time and then the down arrow one time. You're just rocking it in place. Now I'm going to go over to frame 15 and then hold down the Shift key as I drag it straight down until it hits the line. We've now created an animation where this thing goes straight down and then straight up. In order to test this out, hit Control Enter so you can test your movie, and you'll see what it looks like. It's just going straight down and straight up. Now what would be great is if we were using some tween, or let's see, some easing, so that we can make this look better. And you can double click on the layer and you can see that we have some easing type of stuff here, but I'm going to tell you it is really, really hard to do in a motion tween. So I am not going to fix any of that in here. We're going to actually do that as we go forward in the tutorials. For the next animation, I'm going to do the same thing with this guy. I'm going to move him down to the bottom line, so I'm going to go to frame 15, and I can drag that keyframe down by holding down the Alt, clicking on the keyframe, hold the Alt key, drag it over to frame 15, and while I'm at it, I might as well go ahead and duplicate it out to frame 30 as well, then come back to frame 15 and drag them down. Now that I've got my keyframes for the different positions, you can right-click in between two keyframes and say, Create Classic Tween. Right-click in between, Create Classic Tween. And now you'll see the second animation is doing the exact same thing that the first animation was doing, going straight down and then going straight back up. Now for the next one, we're going to ease a little bit. So let's duplicate the animation the same way. I'll duplicate all 3 frames, all 3 places, all 3 keyframes, go back to the middle one, and drag it down to the bottom. Now this time, in order to save a little bit of time, I can click and drag across both sections of animation 3, right-click, and choose Create Classic Tween. Now we want to change our easing for each of the tweens. When you click on one of the tweens, you can look up here at the right, and you'll see now that the easing is available, and I can move that back up to 100%. Now you'll notice that this time it's at the bottom, but it rises to the top sooner than the other ones, and it slows down towards the top. Now we need to repeat that on the opposite side, and this time we're going to change the easing to -100. This way it hovers at the top and then falls down quickly, bounces right back up, and then hovers more at the top. This easing will make this look so much better when we try it. Let's save your work with Control S and then do Control Enter to test your movie. Now you'll see what that animation looks like, and that indeed looks much, much better. For the next one, we're going to add some squash and stretch to the animation. So let's proceed just like we did before, where we duplicate all the different keyframes, one to the end, back to the middle, drag it down. We can add our easing if we want. We can do it here. Or, I'm sorry, we can add our classic tweens if we want. But I'm going to come back down to the bottom so it's 2 keyframes before it hits. And what we want to do is make a new keyframe there. So I'll insert a keyframe, and I'm going to drag him down. Now what's going to happen is he's going to be stretched. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit to see him a little bit better here. He's going to be stretched, and as he stretches, I can go to the Q key in order to stretch him out a little bit and then pull him in. Now this is also the free transform right there. Now I'm going to pull it up just a little bit. And if you want to make sure that you're in a straight line, use the arrow keys to nudge, and you can even get a little bit more accurate. Now you'll notice with this stretch, what I've done is stretched him out or elongated him, but also squished in his sides, so he stays about the same volume as the original ball. Then, when he hits the ground, he's actually going to squish into it. So in this case, he needs to be squished like that, and then back down to the bottom. And what we hope is the keyframe in between, it looks like he's still touching the bottom line when he squashes against it. Now obviously we need to have the same thing repeated on the other side. So we click on that keyframe, hold down the Alt key, and duplicate him to 2 frames after. Now we can go back and figure out our tweening. So this one should be easing 100, and the first one should be easing -100. Take a look at that. Boom. Pretty easy. Now I'm going to test it with Control Enter, and you'll see, look how much more dynamic it is when we have the squash and stretch. On this last animation, I'm actually going to even save a little bit more time. And this just shows another skill, and that's why. I'm actually going to duplicate the animation that I already have. So I'm going to delete that, select the existing animation that I have for Anim 4, and hold down the Alt key to drag that up to Animation 5. That way I'm actually duplicating it. Now, just to make it easier, I'm going to hide all the other layers. So the only thing that I see is animation number 5. Although I have to admit, I probably should see my buttons because I want to be able to get this underneath the other buttons. That way I can see both. Now what I need to do is edit all of the frames of this animation. In order to do that, I need to look down here and find the different option for edit multiple frames. And that's it right there. Now we select a range of frames to edit, which is going to be all of them, but we have to go and select all of the items again. So you can see everything is selected. Now I move it over to the right, holding down the shift key to make sure it's constrained. And then I can go ahead and close, I can turn on the other layers. Boom. So now I've got basically the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and take off that there and take off the edit multiple frames. And you'll see I now have the exact same thing for the animation 5. But I want to add one thing to make it a little bit more realistic, and that is some sort of like shadow at the bottom. So in order to do this, let's create a new layer, and this is going to be our shadow layer. Now on this layer, I can actually put an existing copy of this symbol if I like. So you can click on it, drag it down with the Alt key to the layer underneath. You'll see that it has a tween, which we can use to our advantage, but I'm not going to worry too much about it yet. I'm going to go out to about frame 7 or so. And what we want is a shadow here. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to select that object, go to my filters, I'm going to adjust the color and take my brightness down and saturation down. So I'm just taking pretty much everything down to the darkest I can, and then I'm going to blur it. I'm going to blur it by quite a lot, and I want to give it a fairly high quality blur. Now we're also going to squeeze it down a little bit here. And you know what? I think I'm going to change my mind. I think I'm going to not have that, because I think what I need is a better object like that. I need a shadow that looks a little bit better than what I had there. So I'm going to draw a shadow itself. Boom. There we go. That way actually looks a lot better. Now I do want to convert this shadow into a symbol, so I'm going to convert it to a movie clip, and this is going to be called my shadow. Let's make sure that it is exactly in line with the objects. So if it's not, oh, I got to get to that shadow. There it is. It can be. I can get it moved down. So that's pretty close. And this one, I definitely can apply that shadow. There we go. I can apply that blur filter too. This will look a lot better, especially when I take it back up to the high level. Maybe the medium. I think medium might even look better. All right. Now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to duplicate it to about, 24 frames, so on the other side. And then I want to go to the next frame over and insert a blank keyframe. This way, and I can also remove that tween. This way I have that shadow only existing for that little bit. Now what we want to also do is go in between and create another keyframe for it. So insert a keyframe, and then you'll see that's kind of where the shadow is going to hit. And I can even take it up just a little bit so it's just where it hits perfectly. And then with these, what I'm going to do is adjust it by maybe making my blur a little bit blurrier, and I can even go to my alpha and take it down. So it almost feels like it's coming in as the animation happens. And we can duplicate that to the other side. Whoops. Duplicate that to the other side. This is a little bit harder to do, I know, but the effect is to get the appearance of a shadow. And if we test this with Control Enter, this is the stage that you'll be at. You'll have to improve that shadow to make it look a little bit more realistic before you go on. So do that now.